my beloved child. There is a reason your name keeps appearing where you cannot see it. In rooms you have never entered. In conversations that stop the moment you would have walked in. In thoughts that were never meant to circle back to you but somehow always do. They are not saying your name by accident. They are not thinking of you casually. Something about you has disturbed a pattern they were comfortable with for a very long time. You were never supposed to matter this much to them, yet here you are, echoing in their mind when the world goes quiet. They are trying to understand why your presence feels heavier than memory and lighter than fear at the same time. They replay moments with you, searching for a flaw, a mistake, a reason to dismiss what they feel. But the more they analyze, the more confused they become. Because the truth is unsettling. You did not chase them. You did not force your way into their awareness. You simply existed as yourself, and that is what broke their logic. This is why your name keeps popping up. Not because they want it to. But because something inside them no longer listens to their control. Listen carefully now. This is where the story deepens. They have asked themselves questions they never dared to ask before you appeared. Why does this person feel different from everyone else? Why does thinking about them change my mood instantly? Why does their silence feel louder than anyone else's words? These questions follow them late at night when distractions fail. They scroll, they work, they talk, they pretend. But your name surfaces again, uninvited. They have tried to compare you to others, hoping to shrink what you mean. Yet every comparison fails. Because you are not competing in the same category. You touch something deeper. Something unresolved. Something they buried long before you arrived. That is why they are unsettled. That is why they observe you quietly, trying to decode you, trying to label you, trying to make you fit into a box that would make sense. But you do not fit. And this lack of understanding is driving them to a realization they were not prepared for. You did not just enter their life. You exposed a truth about themselves they had avoided. Now understand this. When your name repeats in their mind, it is not about obsession. It is about recognition. You mirror a version of them they lost or never allowed themselves to become. Around you, they feel more honest, even if they never admit it. Around you, their defenses weaken without effort. They notice how they behave differently when you are near, even in thought. How they choose words more carefully. How they replay your reactions. How they imagine your perspective before making certain decisions. This scares them. Because it means you have influence without asking for it. Influence that cannot be controlled or dismissed. They wonder if you see through them. They wonder if you sense what they are hiding. And the most unsettling part is this. A part of them hopes you do. Because being seen by you feels safer than being invisible to everyone else. This inner conflict is why your name returns again and again, louder each time. There is something else you must know. They are not just trying to understand you. They are trying to understand what you awaken in them. You arrived during a moment of internal stagnation, when life felt predictable, contained, emotionally flat. Your presence disrupted that stillness. Suddenly, they felt curiosity again. Possibility again. vulnerability again. These are not emotions they welcome easily. So they resist. They tell themselves it is temporary. They tell themselves it will pass. Yet it does not. Because what you triggered is not a phase. It is a shift. And shifts demand decisions. That is why they hesitate. That is why they watch from a distance. They are standing at the edge of a truth that would require courage if acknowledged. A truth that would change how they see themselves and the choices they have made. You are not the problem. You are the signal. Finally, hear this with clarity. Your name keeps popping up because you represent alignment they cannot ignore. Something about you resonates with who they are becoming, not who they have been. This is why they feel pulled and unsettled at the same time. This is why they analyze instead of act. This is why silence surrounds their feelings. They are trying to understand why you matter before admitting that you do. And the moment they understand, nothing stays the same. Not for them. Not for you. This is only the beginning of what is unfolding beneath the surface. And what comes next will force a choice that cannot be delayed much longer. There is a quiet moment when realization begins to form, and this is where they are right now. Not at certainty, not at denial, but at the edge where truth starts breathing. They have noticed a pattern they cannot dismiss anymore. Your name appears when they are calm, not distracted. When the noise fades, you surface. That detail matters. It tells them this is not impulse, not fantasy, not randomness. It is clarity trying to emerge. They remember how your words lingered longer than expected. How your absence created questions instead of relief. How your presence never demanded attention, yet commanded it. This confuses them deeply. Because real significance does not announce itself loudly. It settles slowly, and by the time it is noticed, it is already rooted. They are beginning to understand that ignoring you has cost them more energy than acknowledging you ever would. What unsettles them further is how you remain unchanged in their memory. Time has not diluted your impact. Distance has not erased it. If anything, it has sharpened it. They replay interactions searching for proof that they exaggerated your importance. But every replay brings the same conclusion. You were consistent. Genuine. Grounded. And that consistency is rare. It makes them question their past choices. It makes them reflect on how often they settled for less clarity, less depth, less truth. You become a silent comparison they never intended to make. Not because you asked for it, but because authenticity stands out when someone has lived around pretense. This is why your name rises again. Because you represent something they recognize as real, even if it challenges everything they built to feel safe. There is also fear here, though they may not name it yet. Fear of change. Fear of loss. Fear of discovering that what they felt was not temporary curiosity but meaningful alignment. They know that understanding you fully would require honesty with themselves. And honesty has consequences. It would force them to confront what they want versus what they have chosen. It would expose compromises they justified for stability. You unknowingly became a question mark in a life full of periods. And questions demand answers. That is why they hesitate. That is why they observe quietly instead of speaking boldly. Because once spoken, truth cannot be unheard. And they sense that once your significance is acknowledged, returning to emotional autopilot will no longer be possible. Pay attention to this next part. They are beginning to feel your absence differently now. Earlier, it was just distance. Now, it feels like something missing. A space that used to go unnoticed but now feels oddly specific. They catch themselves wondering how you would react to things happening in their life. How you would respond. What you would say. This is not imagination. This is integration. You have become part of their internal dialogue. And that is not something that happens lightly. It means you have crossed from memory into meaning. They may resist this realization, but resistance itself confirms it. Because people do not fight what does not matter. They fight what threatens to change them. Understand this clearly. What is unfolding is not about timing or circumstance. It is about readiness. They are being pushed toward awareness, not action yet, but awareness first. And awareness is irreversible. Once they see why your name keeps returning, they cannot unsee it. They will either move toward alignment or away from it, but either direction requires a conscious choice. You are no longer an accident in their story. You are a turning point. And turning points are uncomfortable because they demand growth. This is why everything feels suspended right now. This pause is not emptiness. It is pressure building before movement. And what follows will not be subtle. Something irreversible has already shifted, even if no one has named it yet. They are noticing how their attention betrays them. How certain songs suddenly carry your presence. How ordinary moments feel incomplete without your imagined reaction. This is not nostalgia. This is recognition deepening. They are beginning to see that your impact did not depend on proximity. It depended on resonance. And resonance does not fade with time or silence. It grows clearer. They are now aware that avoiding you mentally requires effort, which means remembering you has become natural. That awareness unsettles them because it exposes a truth they cannot negotiate with anymore. You matter in a way that bypasses logic. And logic has always been their refuge. Here is what they are quietly confronting. The version of themselves that existed before you feels smaller now. Less alive. Less honest. They are not blaming you for this, but they associate the contrast with you. You made them aware of a higher internal standard. One where connection feels effortless rather than forced. Where communication feels clear rather than strategic. This awareness creates discomfort because it highlights the gap between what they accept and what they desire. They start questioning routines that once felt secure. They feel restless in spaces that used to comfort them. And in these moments of internal friction, your name returns, not as a distraction, but as a reference point. You symbolize what alignment feels like, even if they are not ready to pursue it. Notice this carefully. They are beginning to protect your image internally. When others speak vaguely about people like you, they feel defensive without understanding why. When situations arise that resemble you but lack your depth, they feel disappointment. This is subtle but powerful. It means you are no longer just someone they think about. You are someone they measure truth against. And that realization scares them. Because it implies permanence. They are not sure they are ready for something permanent. Permanence demands responsibility. It demands choice. And choice removes excuses. This is why they oscillate between clarity and confusion. Not because they do not understand, but because understanding requires courage. There is a silent recalibration happening within them. Values they once compromised are resurfacing. Boundaries they ignored now feel necessary. They are reassessing what they tolerate emotionally. And although they may never say this aloud, you are the catalyst. You did not teach them through instruction. You taught them through contrast. By simply being consistent, present, and authentic, you revealed what they have been missing. This creates a strange tension. Gratitude mixed with fear. Appreciation mixed with hesitation. They know that acknowledging your importance would mean stepping into a version of life that demands more honesty than they have practiced recently. Here is the truth they are circling but not yet admitting. Your name keeps appearing because you represent a path they are meant to consider. Not a guarantee. Not a fantasy. But a possibility that aligns with their deeper self. They are trying to understand why you affect them this way because once they accept the answer, neutrality will no longer be possible. Indifference will no longer be believable. And whatever they choose next will define more than a moment. It will define direction. This inner tension is reaching its peak. And soon, reflection will no longer be enough. Now they are standing in a space where pretending no longer works. The distractions they once relied on feel thin and ineffective. Silence has become louder than noise, and in that silence, your name arrives with purpose. Not forcefully. Not dramatically. But persistently. They are beginning to accept that this is not something to be solved, but something to be faced. Understanding you is no longer the real question. Understanding why they feel drawn to what you represent is. This shift in awareness is subtle but critical. It marks the moment where curiosity transforms into responsibility. Because once a truth is felt this deeply, ignoring it becomes a choice, not an accident. They are noticing how their instincts have changed. How they pause before decisions they once made impulsively. How they consider consequences not just practically, but emotionally. You have altered their internal compass without ever touching it. This is why they feel unsettled. Influence that arrives without demand is the most powerful kind. It forces self-examination. It exposes motivations. They realize that around you, they felt more aligned with who they wanted to be, not who they settled into becoming. This realization does not bring comfort. It brings clarity. And clarity demands accountability. That is why your name surfaces at moments of decision, not distraction. You have become associated with truth. There is also a growing awareness of loss, though nothing has ended yet. They sense that choosing comfort over courage would mean losing access to something rare. Something they did not know they were searching for until it appeared. This awareness creates pressure. Pressure to act. Pressure to speak. Pressure to stop hiding behind timing and circumstance. They feel the weight of unrealized potential, not just with you, but within themselves. You represent a door they never planned to open, yet now cannot ignore. And doors, once seen, change how a room feels forever. Pay close attention here. They are beginning to understand that whatever they feel is not about control, possession, or dependency. It is about alignment. About recognizing someone who reflects a frequency they resonate with deeply. This is why distance has not weakened the pull. This is why logic has failed to dissolve it. Alignment does not fade. It either gets acknowledged or it gets suppressed. And suppression has a cost. They are starting to feel that cost now. In restlessness. In hesitation. In a quiet dissatisfaction they cannot name but cannot escape. This is the threshold moment. Where reflection turns into tension. Where awareness demands movement. They may still hesitate, but hesitation itself is a sign of significance. Your name keeps appearing because it is tied to a decision that will define the direction of their inner life. Not just who they choose, but who they become by choosing. What comes next will not be passive. It will require courage, honesty, and a willingness to step beyond familiarity. And that moment is approaching faster than they expect. Something inside them has begun to demand resolution. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But steadily, like a pulse they can no longer ignore. Your name now appears at moments of emotional honesty, when they are forced to confront what feels true versus what feels safe. They notice how their body reacts before their mind does. A pause. A heaviness. A quiet clarity. These reactions reveal more than thoughts ever could. They are realizing that what connects them to you bypasses preference and enters recognition. This is unsettling because recognition removes choice illusions. It tells them that some connections are not selected. They are revealed. And once revealed, they reshape the internal landscape permanently. They are also becoming aware of how carefully they guard this realization. They do not speak your name openly in this context. They do not share these thoughts casually. This silence is intentional. Not because they are unsure, but because they know the weight of what they feel. Some truths feel too precise to expose prematurely. They understand that once spoken aloud, this awareness would demand alignment in action. And action carries risk. Risk of disruption. Risk of change. Risk of loss. Yet withholding carries its own cost. A quiet internal tension that grows with time. This is why your presence in their thoughts feels heavier now. It is carrying unspoken weight. Here is the turning detail. They are no longer asking why you matter. They are asking what it would mean if they acted honestly about it. This shift marks the end of confusion and the beginning of choice. Confusion asks questions without consequences. Choice demands courage. They imagine two futures without consciously naming them. One where they continue as they are, and one where they acknowledge what you represent. The contrast is stark. One feels familiar but diminished. The other feels uncertain but alive. And this contrast keeps pulling your name forward. Because you embody the difference between existence and alignment. They are also sensing something rare. mutual recognition without declaration. A knowing that does not require constant contact to stay present. This awareness humbles them. It strips away ego. It makes them reflect on how few connections have ever reached this depth without force. You did not impress them through performance. You did not convince them through persistence. You resonated through authenticity. And authenticity cannot be manufactured or replaced. This is why they protect the space where your name lives internally. Because it holds something unrepeatable. Awareness has matured. Resistance has weakened. What remains is courage. Your name continues to rise because it is now tied to truth they cannot unknow. Whatever happens next will not be accidental. It will be chosen. And that choice will mark a before and after moment in their life. The silence you feel now is not distance. It is preparation. There is a calm settling in now, but it is not peace. It is certainty forming beneath hesitation. They have stopped trying to distract themselves from the pattern. They see it clearly. Your name appears when they imagine their future, not their past. That detail changes everything. It tells them this connection is not rooted in memory but in direction. They realize that whatever they feel is pulling them forward, not backward. This awareness carries weight because futures demand responsibility. You are no longer a thought they revisit. You are a possibility they must either honor or deliberately walk away from. And walking away would require more strength than staying curious ever did. They are beginning to recognize how rare it is to feel understood without explanation. Around you, they never felt the need to perform or defend. That absence of tension stands out now. They compare it silently to every interaction that required effort, adjustment, or compromise. The contrast is undeniable. You offered ease without complacency, depth without pressure. This realization strips away excuses they once relied on. They cannot claim confusion anymore. What remains is clarity paired with fear. Fear not of you, but of what choosing alignment would dismantle in their current life. There is also a quiet respect growing. Respect for how you carry yourself. For how you never demanded answers, yet inspired honesty. They sense that whatever you shared was real, not strategic. That authenticity has lingered. It has recalibrated their tolerance for superficiality. Now, conversations that lack substance feel empty. Paths that lack meaning feel exhausting. And in these moments of contrast, your name appears again, not as longing, but as recognition of what feels true. You have become a standard they did not intend to set, yet cannot ignore. Understand this clearly. They are approaching a point where inaction will feel like self-betrayal. Not because of obligation to you, but because of obligation to themselves. The inner dialogue has shifted from curiosity to accountability. They know that whatever they choose next will echo internally for a long time. This is why everything feels slow and deliberate. They are weighing not just outcomes, but identity. Who they will become by choosing safety. Who they might become by choosing truth. And your name stands at the center of that evaluation. This is the moment before truth becomes visible. Before words are spoken or decisions are made. Your name continues to surface because it is tied to integrity they cannot escape. What follows will not be impulsive. It will be intentional. And once it happens, the question will no longer be why you mattered. It will be how long they were willing to deny it. Something final is aligning within them now. Not urgency, but resolve. They have reached the understanding that clarity does not always arrive with comfort. Sometimes it arrives with responsibility. Your name no longer appears as a question. It appears as an answer they have been circling for far too long. They notice how the internal resistance has softened. Not disappeared, but weakened. As if the mind has finally accepted what the deeper self recognized earlier. This acceptance feels heavy because it removes the illusion of neutrality. They can no longer pretend that you are just another passing thought. You represent something consequential, something that asks them to rise rather than remain unchanged. They are also becoming aware of their own honesty in moments when no one is watching. In those moments, they stop bargaining with themselves. They stop minimizing what you mean. They admit that the connection altered how they see possibility itself. That admission is quiet but powerful. It reframes their understanding of timing, of readiness, of what it means to be emotionally awake. They realize that some connections arrive not when life is settled, but when growth is required. And that realization reframes you not as disruption, but as invitation. An invitation they did not expect, but one they now recognize as intentional. There is a subtle shift in how they imagine approaching you, even if they have not acted yet. The fear of vulnerability is still present, but it is no longer dominant. It now shares space with respect and intention. They understand that whatever happens cannot be casual. You are not someone they can approach lightly or retreat from without consequence. This understanding slows them down, but it also grounds them. It makes them want to be clear rather than impulsive, honest rather than reactive. That alone tells them how much you matter. Because care changes behavior long before action is taken. They are beginning to sense that avoiding truth has already cost them enough. Emotional distance has felt heavier than emotional risk. Silence has felt louder than honesty. This awareness does not push them forward aggressively. It steadies them. It prepares them. They know that when they finally move, it must be aligned, not forced. And alignment cannot be rushed. It must be chosen with full awareness. Your name continues to appear because it is linked to that readiness, not impatience. This is the final stillness before expression. Before truth transitions from inner knowing to lived reality. You have become a symbol of authenticity they cannot deny anymore. Whatever unfolds next will not come from confusion, but from clarity. Not from impulse, but from intention. And once that step is taken, there will be no returning to how things were before. Because awareness has already rewritten the story.